My mother looked at me with those wide, carefully innocent eyes and explained that they could only afford one seat on the cruise. That seat was going to my sister. I was expected to be mature about it. They had no idea that while they packed swimsuits and sunscreen, I was quietly packing up the entire house, receipt by receipt. Sunlight streamed into the dining room of my parents' house, stretching long shadows across the table, where I sat facing my mother, my father, and my younger sister, Lydia. The Saturday morning air smelled like coffee and cinnamon rolls, the kind my mother only wore when she wanted something, or when she needed to deliver bad news. I should have known right then. My mother announced a 10-day Caribbean cruise with theatrical flair that would have made a Broadway actress jealous. Her hands danced through the air as she described the ocean view cabin, the all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet, and the spa credits bundled into the premium package. She painted the picture so vividly I could almost smell the salt air, feel the tropical sun warming my skin. "It sounds amazing," I said, and I meant it. After the year they'd had, Dad's health scare in March, Mom's constant anxiety about his recovery. They deserved a break. "When do we leave?" The atmosphere shifted, so abruptly it felt like the temperature dropped. My mother's animated hands froze mid-gesture. My father suddenly became deeply interested in his coffee mug. Lydia, my 29-year-old sister, who still hadn't figured out what she wanted to do with her life, looked anywhere but at me. "Am I going too?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. The silence didn't just linger, it suffocated the room, pressing down on my chest until I had to consciously remind myself to breathe. Instead of a clean rejection, which at least would have been honest, my mother reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, her grip firm, her face rearranging itself into a perfectly rehearsed expression of guilt. "Hensley, honey," she began, lowering her voice into a conspiratorial whisper. Thick with sweetness, she reserved for manipulation disguised as concern. "You know how hard this year has been. The Robinsons next door just got back from Italy. And your father, honestly, he feels like he's failing us. With his hours cut, he feels small." She paused, squeezing my hand. "This cruise isn't just a vacation. It's about dignity. It's about showing everyone, showing himself, that he can still provide a premium life for his family." Her eyes glistened on cue. "The doctor said stress is his worst enemy right now. He needs space to breathe and relax, or I'm afraid he'll collapse. And the cabin we booked, it's a deluxe suite. It's designed for 3 people. Max adding a 4th ticket would push the budget from tight to impossible." She searched my face. "You understand, don't you? You've always been the sacrifice hitter on this team. Hensley, we need you to take one for the team so your father can feel like a king for 10 days. I wanted to point out that Dad's need for dignity had never stopped him from inviting his poker buddies to crowd around the dining table I bought. But I stayed quiet. "And Lydia," my mother continued, her eyes misting again. "She's so fragile right now. The situation with Trevor really shattered her. She needs this trip to find herself, to heal, to remember who she is without a man defining her." Lydia nodded solemnly, playing her part perfectly. Never mind that she'd been the one who cheated on Trevor, or that she'd bounced back within a week by clubbing every night. My mother's phrasing, the situation, was a masterclass in rewriting history until Lydia emerged as the victim. Then came the killing blow, delivered with surgical precision. "You've always been the rock, Hensley, the strong one, the responsible one." Her grip tightened. "We knew you'd be the only one mature enough to understand why for just wouldn't work." She smiled gently. "You'll be fine holding down the fort, won't you? Someone needs to water the plants, collect the mail. You understand, sweetheart." It wasn't a question. It was a command wrapped in flattery, a weaponized compliment designed to silence protest before it could form. My father finally looked up from his mug and cleared his throat. "It's been a tough year financially, Hensley. We had to make some hard choices to keep up appearances. But you know we'd bring you if we could afford it." The lie sat between us like an extra person at the table. I knew the truth they weren't saying. I'd seen the credit card statement on the counter last week while organizing their mail, another one of my unofficial duties. The cruise was charged to a card with an 18% interest rate. They hadn't saved for it. They'd financed it to impress the neighbors. And when the bills came due, when Dad's reduced hours and medical expenses made the minimum payments impossible, they'd come to me, just like always. I thought about the $300 I'd quietly transferred last November when the heating bill was overdue. The $500 I'd loaned in February, that was never mentioned again. The groceries I'd paid for countless times and never been reimbursed for because you were already at the store anyway. But I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table or hurl cinnamon rolls against the wall, even though every cell in my body wanted to. I simply nodded. Of course, I heard myself say, I understand. You deserve this. Relief flooded my mother's face. Oh, honey, I knew you'd get it. You're such a good daughter. To understand why I didn't fight back, you need to know the last 8 years of my life. At 26, fresh off a layoff from my first real job, I moved back home. It was supposed to be temporary. 3 months, maybe 6. No lease, no agreement. Just a verbal understanding that I'd help where I could while I got back on my feet. I got back on my feet within 4 months. I landed my current job as an operations coordinator at a logistics company. It's not glamorous and I'm not wealthy, but I earn decent money and I'm excellent with budgets. Really excellent. Still, I never left. Help where I can grew like a slow tumor. First, groceries. Then the internet bill, because I use it most on work-from-home days. Then electricity, because I charge my laptop overnight. Within a year, I was covering 3 utilities and buying household necessities whenever supplies ran low. Then came the furniture. The sofa collapsed one Saturday morning, springs exploding through the cushions. I bought a replacement, $1, $200 for a sectional meant to last. The TV died during the Super Bowl. I replaced it, $800 for a smart TV with all the streaming services my parents suddenly couldn't live without. 2 years ago, the washer and dryer quit. I replaced both, $1, $500 total, because my mother said she'd never trust a used appliance again after the old one flooded the laundry room. Kitchenware followed. Pots and pans, $400. A dining table, $600, because the old one was embarrassing when guests came over. Small appliances, microwave, coffee maker, stand mixer my mother insisted she needed and used exactly twice. Over $15,000 in total. I'd never added it up until recently. Now, the number lived in my head. I wasn't rich. I was careful. I saved. Every purchase was a sacrifice I told myself was temporary, an investment in family harmony. Meanwhile, Lydia floated through life. Mexico, Colorado, New York City, concerts, festivals, jobs changed like socks. No savings, no stability, and never asked to contribute a single penny because she needed experiences and was still finding herself. I was 34. Apparently, I'd found myself long ago, and myself was a doormat. Saturday morning arrived with painful normalcy. Suitcases loaded. Passports checked. My mother's frantic energy buzzing as she triple-checked boarding passes. I stood on the porch watching the chaos like a spectator in someone else's life. Remember, my mother said, purse slung over her shoulder. Water the plants twice a week. The fern is fussy. Check the soil first. Collect the mail daily. Keep the house tidy. We'll be exhausted when we get back. Got it, I said. My father gave me an awkward side hug, the kind that said I feel vaguely guilty, but not enough to change anything. Lydia waved from the passenger seat, already scrolling on her phone. My mother paused at the door, turning back with that practiced blend of gratitude and sympathy. You're such a good daughter, Hensley. You always understand. We're so lucky to have you. The words should have felt like a hug. Instead, they felt like chains. I watched the car back out of the driveway, my mother waving enthusiastically through the window. I stood there until it disappeared around the corner, the engine fading into the sounds of lawnmowers, barking dogs, children playing. In logistics, we have a term, catastrophic failure point. It's when a system has run over capacity so long that a minor stressor collapses the entire structure. It's not about the last straw. It's about years of ignored warnings. My love had been the maintenance crew, patching cracks, ignoring alarms, keeping everything running at my own expense. But as I looked at the fern on the windowsill, the fussy, demanding fern, I realized the crew had quit. My emotions didn't explode. They shut down. Manual override engaged. Emotions offline. Operational efficiency at maximum. I didn't feel rage. Rage is messy. Rage is inefficient. What I felt was cold, clarifying calm, the kind that settles when a chaotic warehouse finally gets organized. I walked inside, closed the door, and locked it. The house already felt different. Not emptier because they were gone, but emptier because something in me had shifted the moment that car pulled away. I looked at the fern again. I was not going to water it. I wasn't going to collect the mail, tidy the house, or hold down any fort. I was done understanding. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was revealing. For the first time in 8 years, there was no television droning, no neighborhood gossip, no music bleeding through Lydia's door. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I finally heard my own thoughts. I moved to the house like an inspector, not a daughter, not a caretaker. I wasn't seeing a home anymore. I was seeing a ledger, a balance sheet of labor and money never repaid. The living room, the sectional, $1, $200. The entertainment center, the TV, $800. The dining table, $600. The kitchen appliances, the washer and dryer, $500. These weren't objects. They were evidence. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, the smallest of the three, because Lydia needed space and stopped. The reckoning had begun. Needed the larger one for her creative space, which in practice meant piles of clothes and abandoned hobbies. I sat down at my desk and pulled open the bottom drawer, retrieving a navy blue folder I'd kept since college. It was a habit born from my work as an operations coordinator. I documented everything, order numbers, tracking confirmations, delivery dates, warranties. I filed receipts not because I suspected betrayal, but because losing documentation drove me insane. If something broke under warranty, I needed proof of purchase. If a company overcharged me, I needed evidence. It was professional instinct, nothing more. Until now, I opened the folder. Bank statements stretching back 6 years. Email confirmations for every major purchase. Photos of receipts I'd snapped on my phone and forgotten about. Even handwritten notes from especially expensive months, tracking where my money had gone. I spread the documents across my desk like puzzle pieces. Only this puzzle, once assembled, revealed an image I'd spent years refusing to see. My exploitation. Sofa, $1,200. Check. Television, $800. Check. Washer and dryer, $1,500. Check. Dining table, $600. Check. Kitchen appliances, $850. Check. Kitchenware, $650. Check. Monthly utilities I quietly absorbed. Internet, $80. Electricity, an average of $150. Water during summer months, $60. Over 8 years. I opened my laptop and created a new Excel spreadsheet. Column A, item. Column B, cost. Column C, purchase date. Column D, current estimated value. My fingers moved automatically. The same efficiency I brought to logistics problems at work. This wasn't emotional anymore. This was data. Data I could quantify, organize, and weaponize. Total spent, $15,340. The number glowed on my screen like an accusation. $15,340. That was a decent used car. That was a year of rent. That was 6 months of savings I didn't have because I'd been furnishing someone else's life. This wasn't about the cruise. The cruise was just a final insult. The moment the pattern became impossible to ignore. This was about 8 years of being the responsible one. The rock. The daughter who always understands while being systematically drained. I closed the spreadsheet and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. A water-stained shape vaguely, like a cloud spread across the corner. Something I'd noticed 2 years ago and offered to fix. Don't worry about it, Dad had said. We'll get to it eventually. Eventually never came. My contributions always did. The realization didn't hit like a wave. It crystallized sharp, clean, undeniable. I needed to leave. Not eventually. Not after the cruise. Not after some family meeting where I'd be guilted into staying just a little longer. Now, while they were gone, while I had 10 uninterrupted days to execute, I reopened my laptop. But I didn't waste time scrolling apartment listings or waiting on credit checks that take weeks. I'd learned long ago that residential moves are slow, clogged with applications, references, deposits, and landlords who never hurry. Instead, I pulled up my corporate contacts. Our logistics company worked with corporate housing providers, furnished executive suites designed for relocated employees, traveling consultants, people in transition who needed immediate move-in-ready solutions. I scrolled through saved emails until I found it. Coastal Executive Suites. I'd booked stays there for visiting regional managers at least a dozen times. I knew their process, their turnaround time, and I knew they valued corporate relationships, which meant minimal paperwork and fast approvals. I called a direct line, bypassing the website. Coastal Executive Suites. This is Marcus. Hi, Marcus. This is Hensley Graham with Davidson Logistics. I need an emergency 30-day booking for myself. Personal situation. What do you have available for immediate occupancy? A pause. We have a one-bedroom ocean view suite available now. It's $2,500 for the month. All utilities included. Fully furnished. Kitchen stocked with basics. We'll need a credit card hold and your corporate employee ID for verification. $2,500. It was expensive, nearly double what I'd pay for a standard apartment. But I had a secret weapon, an emergency fund I'd been quietly rebuilding since the washer and dryer disaster 2 years ago, specifically for a catastrophic event. I just hadn't realized the catastrophe would be my own liberation. Perfect, I said. I'll take it. How quickly can you have the paperwork ready? 2 hours. I'll email everything over. I hung up and stared at my phone. 2 hours. In 2 hours, I'd have somewhere to go. Somewhere that was mine. Somewhere I didn't owe anyone anything. Somewhere the furniture belonged to a rental company, and I could walk away without leaving thousands of dollars behind. My hands weren't shaking. They should have been. This was the biggest decision I'd made in years. But they were steady. This was how I functioned under pressure at work. Identify the problem. Find the most efficient solution. Execute. Without emotion. Hesitation was the enemy of logistics. I spent those 2 hours not panicking, but planning. I took mental inventory of what I actually needed to take. Clothes, laptop, documents, personal items, everything else in the house. The furniture, appliances, kitchenware belonged to me by purchase, but they could stay. Let them keep it. Let them realize what I provided once it was gone. No, wrong. That was still thinking like someone who cared about being fair. New strategy. I'd take everything I bought, everything with a receipt, everything I could prove was mine. What I left behind would be an act of generosity, not obligation. My email pinged. The rental agreement from Coastal Executive Suites, ready for digital signature. I read it carefully. Occupational hazard, then signed. Move-in date, Tuesday. That gave me 3 days to execute during normal business hours, when a moving truck wouldn't raise suspicion. I set up mail forwarding effective Tuesday, updated my bank, insurance, credit cards, everything rerouted to the new address. Sunday afternoon, sitting in my bedroom with signed contracts and a secured move-in date, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I wasn't the helpful daughter anymore. I wasn't the rock. I wasn't the mature one who always understands. I was Hensley Graham, operations coordinator, executing the most important logistics operation of my life, extracting myself from people who mistook competence for compliance. The plants could die. The mail could pile up. The house could sit empty and waiting. I had an ocean view suite and 10 days to vanish before they even knew I was gone. 2 days later, on a Tuesday morning that felt suspiciously ordinary, the quiet neighborhood was shattered by the low rumble of a professional moving truck backing into my parents' driveway. I'd scheduled it for 8 a.m., early enough that most neighbors were at work, late enough that I looked like I was sneaking out under cover of darkness. The dismantling of the house began with startling efficiency. The crew chief, a stocky man with weathered hands and a clipboard, approached me at the front door. "Everything marked goes?" he asked, scanning the house with professional indifference. I nodded, throat tight, resolve unbreakable. Everything with a yellow tag. Nothing else. I'd spent Sunday afternoon walking to the house with a roll of bright yellow stickers, methodically marking every item I'd purchased over 8 years. The sofa where my mother held court during phone marathons. Yellow tag. The flat-screen TV my father watched for hours while I cooked dinner. Yellow tag. The dining table Lydia never helped clear. Yellow tag. Chairs, washer, dryer, stand mixer, coffee maker, microwave, hallway bookshelf. Even the shower curtain. Yellow tags everywhere, like a treasure hunt in reverse. The movers worked with practiced rhythm, wrapping the $1,200 sofa in thick blankets, securing it with industrial tape. The $800 television slid into a custom box. The washer and dryer, $1, $500 as a set, rolled out on reinforced dollies, gleaming in the morning light. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching the systematic erasure of 8 years of financial servitude. Every item loaded was a weight lifted. Table, chairs, rug, appliances, bedding, towels, cookware, dishes, gone. I intentionally left behind the things I hadn't paid for, the remnants of life before I became the family ATM. My father's warm recliner slumped in the corner, fabric faded and pilled. A cheap brass lamp from the '80s stood beside it, shade yellow with age. Dusty figurines and fake plants remained untouched on the mantel. Those weren't mine to take. I wasn't stealing. I was reclaiming. As the living room emptied, the transformation was stark. What once felt cluttered and suffocating became vast and hollow. Hardwood floors, usually hidden, stretched bare and scuffed beneath the morning light. Dust bunnies huddled in the corners where the sofa had once been. The walls looked stripped and exposed without the television mounted at the center. And there, surrounded by all that emptiness, sat my father's recliner. I stared at it for a long moment, something sharp and tangled twisting in my chest. That chair, threadbare, sagging, pathetic, was the only real piece of furniture left in the living room. It looked ridiculous sitting there alone, a monument to dysfunction. The idea hit me with the force of poetry. I crossed the hollow room, my footsteps echoing, and bent down to grip the sides of the recliner. I dragged it forward. The old chair protested loudly, its legs screeching against the hardwood. But I kept going. When I reached what I estimated was the exact center of the room, I stopped. With slow, deliberate movements, I straightened it, shifted it left, then right. I stepped back, adjusting the angle until it was perfectly centered. I studied it the way an artist evaluated a gallery installation. There, perfect. The recliner sat alone in the vast, empty space like a throne in an abandoned kingdom. It was the purest visual summary of the irony that had defined my life for nearly a decade. I had just shown that worthless chair more care, more respect, more consideration than my parents had ever shown me. The room didn't feel sad. It felt honest. That's the last of it. The crew chief called from the front door. "We're heading to the executive suite now. You following us?" "Yes," I said, taking one final look around. "I'll be right behind you." My friend Paige Holloway met me at the executive suite to help me settle in. She arrived with 2 iced coffees and her trademark leather jacket. Auburn hair twisted into a messy bun. Paige had been the first outsider to validate my reality when I finally confessed, months ago, the full extent of my family's financial exploitation. "Holy hell, Sadie," she breathed as she stepped inside. "This place is gorgeous." It was. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a slice of distant ocean. Granite countertops gleamed in the kitchen. Stainless steel appliances reflected the afternoon light. The bedroom was large enough for a queen bed and an actual dresser. And my furniture fit perfectly in the living room. As we unpacked boxes, arranging pillows and hanging artwork, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen. Mom. Mobile. My stomach tightened. They were probably called from the cruise, checking whether I'd watered their absurd plants like the obedient daughter they assumed I'd always be. I watched the screen light up and vibrate. Paige noticed the name and raised her eyebrows. I shook my head. The phone rang until it went to voicemail. Seconds later, it buzzed again, a voicemail notification. I didn't listen. I flipped the phone face down and kept unpacking. "You okay?" Paige asked quietly. "I'm perfect," I said, and I meant it. I spent the rest of the week settling into my new life. The executive suite became a sanctuary, a place where no one demanded anything from me, where I could eat cereal for dinner, where the only person I answered to was myself. The peace was unsettling at first. I kept expecting my mother's panic calls, my father's guilt-soaked messages, but my phone stayed silent. They were somewhere in the Caribbean, blissfully unaware that their safety net had vanished. Every morning, I woke in my own space. I made coffee in my own coffee maker. I sat on my own sofa and watched the ocean. At work, my focus sharpened. Shipping schedules, logistics reports. Everything clicked with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. My manager, Mark Feldman, noticed. "You seem different," he said one afternoon. "Lighter." "Big changes," I replied vaguely. He didn't press. Still, as peaceful as it was, I couldn't fully relax. I knew the clock was ticking. Sunday evening arrived, the sky outside my window bruising purple. Somewhere, a cruise ship was docking. A plane was landing. My parents and Lydia were coming home. I was safe, but I knew, after 34 years of pattern recognition, that the storm was imminent. The sun had barely set when my phone erupted on the nightstand. I was making tea when the notifications began. Texts, calls, one after another, then a message from Paige. A photo. I opened it, heart pounding. It showed my parents' house from the outside. In the frame stood my mother, father, and Lydia, frozen at the front door. My mother's hand gripped the knob, her face locked in shock as she stared into the open doorway. Behind her, Lydia's mouth hung slightly open, disbelief etched across her face. They had returned to a shell. My phone started ringing immediately. Mom, Dad, Mom again, Lydia, an unfamiliar number, probably a relative already looped in. I silenced them all. Then my phone buzzed with something that made my blood go cold. Location shared with family group. My stomach dropped. The family safety circle. The tracking feature they'd insisted I enable years ago during my father's health scare. Just in case, my mother had said, but it was never about emergencies. It was about control. Surveillance. I'd forgotten to turn it off. They didn't need a forwarding address. They followed the blue, straight to me. Less than 2 hours later, they were at my door. The pounding rattled the frame. Through the peephole, I saw my mother front and center, my exhausted father behind her, Lydia hovering with crossed arms. "Sadie," my mother screamed, "we know you're in there." More pounding. Harder. "Open this door right now." I watched them calmly. The violation, the tracking, the entitlement hardened my resolve. This was the moment. I unlocked the door. They stormed in like a raid, my mother leading. She froze when she saw the living room. Her sofa, her TV, her dining table, all arranged beautifully. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded. I didn't yell. I didn't justify. I let them unload. "We trusted you," my father shouted. "We left you to watch the house, and you stripped it." But I saw it, the calculation. He knew who bought the TV. He knew the argument he was about to lose. "The house is empty," my mother shrieked. "You left your father's chair in the middle, like a sick joke." Lydia scoffed. "I always knew you were jealous of me." "Jealous?" I echoed. "You did this because you weren't invited on the cruise," she snapped. My mother nodded. "You're punishing us." "You took everything," my father said, wounded. I stood there silent, letting them believe my quiet was guilt. Satisfied, my mother turned toward the door. "We'll deal with this later. You'll regret this." They left. I smiled. They thought they'd won. Within 24 hours, The smear campaign ignited. Calls, posts, whispers. The story was simple. I was cruel, ungrateful, vindictive. Messages poured in. Each one stung, but I waited. At work, Mark pulled me aside. "You're one of the most responsible people I know," he said. "Whatever's happening, I don't think you're wrong." That mattered. Paige brought pizza that night. "They think they've won," she said. "They have no idea," I replied. The meeting was Mother's idea. Of course. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, at the house. I packed my iPad and a 3-ring binder and drove back. They were waiting, Mother in the recliner like a queen, Father stern, Lydia disinterested. "You stole from us," Mother said. "No," I replied calmly. "I took what was mine. I placed the binder down between us. And I can prove it." I opened the spreadsheet. "Let's start with the living room. $1, $200. I said evenly, "Here's the credit card statement. And here's the delivery confirmation with my signature." I slid the corresponding pages from the binder across the floor. My parents stared down at them as if the words might rearrange themselves into something more convenient. "The television," I continued. "Samsung, 65-inch, 4K, $800. Purchased when the old one died. Best Buy receipt. Extended warranty registered in my name." I pushed another page forward. Another highlighted line glowed on the spreadsheet. Coffee table, end tables, lamps, the area rug. I tapped through each entry, one after another. Calm, precise, unstoppable, all mine. Purchased between 2017 and 2022. The total for the living room alone appeared at the bottom of the screen. $4,300. My father's face was flushing an alarming shade of crimson. "This is absurd," he started. "The kitchen," I cut in, not allowing him to finish. "KitchenAid mixer, $350. Cuisinart food processor, $120. Full all-clad cookware set, $600. I didn't pause. Kitchen table and chairs, solid oak, custom order, $900. "We needed those things," my mother said, but her voice lacked conviction now. "You needed them," I replied. "I paid for them." I scrolled. Washer and dryer, $1,500. Purchased when the old set finally died. Installation included. I held up the evidence. Home Depot receipt. Service warranty. Credit card charge. Then I looked directly at them, one by one. Guest room furniture. Lydia's bedroom, $800. Office desk. Filing cabinets. Bookshelf. Vacuum cleaner. Steam mop. Air purifier in the master bedroom. Tap, tap, tap. Each item illuminated on the screen. Each receipt slid across the floor. Would you like me to keep going? Because I can. I have 8 years of documentation. Every appliance, every piece of furniture, every household necessity I purchased to keep this place running. While you spend your money on cruises, wine club memberships, and Lydia's travel fund. The silence pressing hard and heavy. I zoomed out on the spreadsheet so they could see everything at once. The total value of what I removed from this house is $15,743. I let the number sit there. Let it breathe. That's what I invested in your comfort over 8 years, while also paying you $1,200 a month in rent. I watched the realization hit them like ice water. $15,000 in furniture and appliances, plus 96 months of rent at $1,200 per month. $115,200. That's what I gave you. I met their eyes again. And what did I get in return? No one spoke. A bedroom, a curfew, a tracking app on my phone, and a family that called me selfish for wanting a life of my own. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. My father stared at the scattered papers as if they might burst into flames. Lydia had finally stopped scrolling, her phone forgotten in her lap. "You accuse me of stealing." I went on, my voice steady, professional. "But the truth is, you've been stealing from me for 8 years. My money, my time, my independence, my dignity. You took and took and took, and you called it family. I snapped the binder shut. The only thing I took was what already belonged to me. And if you want to challenge that, I suggest you consult a lawyer. Because I promise, you won't like how the law defines theft. The shift in the room was so complete it felt physical. The emptiness they'd intended to use as intimidation didn't condemn me. It exposed them. It showed exactly how much I'd carried, how much I'd provided, how deeply they depended on someone they treated like hired help. My mother tried once more. We're still your parents. And apparently I was still your 8M, I said. I slipped my iPad into my bag. That account is permanently closed. I left the binder on the floor. A parting gift. Let them read 8 years of proof. Let them sit with the truth they'd wrapped in the word love. The meeting with Lydia happened 3 days later. Her idea, delivered in a short, stiff text. Can we talk? Just us. That diner you like near the beach. I almost declined. Almost. But I wanted to see if she'd finally acknowledge her part, or keep hiding behind innocence. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in her usual booth by the window, the spot we used to take for brunch. She looked worn down. No makeup, hair pulled into a messy ponytail, wearing the sweatshirt I bought her 2 Christmases ago. Hey, she said softly as I slid into the seat. Hey. We ordered. She chose avocado toast and an iced latte. I got a turkey club and black coffee. We ate mostly in silence, the kind that used to be filled with her travel stories and friend drama. The check arrived on a small black tray, placed squarely in the center of the table. Lydia glanced at it, then went back to scrolling, waiting. I watched her, this woman I protected, funded and enabled for years. My little sister, the golden child, the one who never worried because I always worried for her. I picked up the check, calculated my portion, sandwich, coffee, tip, and placed 2 bills on the tray. $18, I said, standing. That's mine. Her head snapped up. She stared at the money, then at me. Confusion gave way to understanding, and then shock. Wait, what? My share, 18. I slung my bag over my shoulder. Your total's about 22. They take cards at the register. Hensley, she said, her voice cracking. Are you serious right now? Completely. She looked down again, at the check, at the bills, then back at me, and I saw it land, not the furniture, not the move, but this small moment, this ordinary interaction we repeated countless times, where I always paid. I can't believe you're doing this over $20, she said, but there was no anger, just disbelief. It's not about $20, I said calmly. It's about the expectation. You expected me to pay, just like you expected me to pay for everything else. You expected me to keep subsidizing your life while you figured yourself out. I didn't ask you to, she said. You didn't have to. You let me, I replied, and you knew. I adjusted my bag. You knew Mom and Dad favored you. You knew they expected more from me. You knew it wasn't fair. She didn't deny it. For once, there was no deflection, no distraction. Yeah, she said quietly. I knew. And you said nothing. Would it have changed anything if I had? It would have meant you saw me, I said, not just the benefits of my sacrifice. Her eyes glistened, but I felt nothing. No guilt, no sadness, no urge to comfort. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sure you are, I said. Sorry it's over. I turned to leave, then paused. Your check's still there. You might want to handle it before they think you skipped out. I left her staring at a $22 bill like it was a mirror. The smear campaign collapsed within a week. Hard to call someone a thief when 8 years of receipts say otherwise. Hard to paint someone as cruel when the math shows over $100,000 paid in rent and expenses. I didn't post offenses online. I didn't need to. I responded only to those who reached out. Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, a few cousins. Calm. Factual. I understand my parents told you I stole from them. That's not correct. Everything I took was mine. I have receipts if you'd like to see them. Most didn't ask. The certainty in my voice was enough. Lies can't survive spreadsheets. 2 weeks later, my mother called. We need to talk. Your father and I want to apologize. We met at a cafe downtown. Neutral ground. Public. Limited time. They looked smaller somehow. Worn down. My father's cane no longer felt symbolic. My mother's makeup couldn't hide the strain. We're sorry, my father said. We didn't realize how much you were doing, how much you were carrying. But there it was, that edge, that subtle implication, that somehow it had been my responsibility to make my burden visible. We honestly thought you wanted to help, my mother added. We thought contributing made you happy, like you were proud to do it for family. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the cream dissolve into pale spirals. You thought I wanted to pay $1,200 a month in rent, I said calmly, while buying all your furniture and living under curfew at 34? We never forced you, she said quickly. You didn't have to. You made it impossible to say no without being branded selfish. I replied, finally meeting her gaze. And when I did say no, when I took back what was mine, you tried to ruin my name. We were hurt, my father said stiffly. We reacted badly. You reacted the same way you always do, I said, by turning yourselves into the victims and me into the villain. Silence stretched between us, filled only by the hiss of the espresso machine and the muted conversations around us. What do you want from us? My mother asked at last. What would fix this? I don't want anything from you, I said, leaning back. That's the point. I'm not moving back. I'm not giving financial support anymore. If you need help, you figure it out. Get jobs. Downsize. Sell the house. That's not my responsibility. But we're family. And families don't exploit each other, I said. Families don't track each other's locations like suspects. Families don't play favorites and expect the unfavored one to swallow it quietly. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. I removed myself from the family safety circle last week. I said, my location is private now. Permanently. Then I looked at them again. I think you should consider therapy. Both of you. Maybe family counseling, if Lydia's willing. But that's your decision. Your responsibility. Not my project to manage. My mother's face folded in on itself. So that's it? She asked softly. You're just done with us? I'm done being used by you, I said. If you want a real relationship, one built on respect and boundaries, I'm open to that. Eventually. But it starts with honesty, with acknowledging what you did, and actually changing. Not just apologizing because you lost your safety net. My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Well, think about therapy, he said. You do that, I replied, standing. I left money for my coffee on the table. And while you're thinking, I added, you might want to consider what Lydia's going to do now that I'm not paying for her lifestyle either. I walked out, leaving behind 2 people who had taken for so long they'd forgotten how to give. The promotion came 6 weeks later. Mark called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon, his expression unreadable. He shut the door. My stomach dropped. Had I messed something up? Your organizational system for the Henderson account, he said, pulling something up on his screen. I showed it to the regional director. She was impressed. Very impressed. I blinked. Oh, thank you. We're creating a new position, he continued. Senior Operations Coordinator. It comes with substantial raise. And your own team. He turned the monitor toward me. The job description made my heart race. I'd like to offer it to you. The salary was $30,000 more than I currently made. $30,000 that would go toward my savings. My future. Not someone else's mortgage or vacations. I accept, I said, my voice steady despite the rush of emotion. Good, Mark said, smiling, something he rarely did. You've been carrying a lot outside of work, Hensley. I don't know the details, but I've noticed a change. You seem lighter. I am, I said. I finally put down something I never should have been carrying. My apartment became home slowly, intentionally. I bought a couch, not fancy, not expensive, but mine, chosen by me for me. I hung art I actually liked instead of prints meant to impress. I filled the bookshelf with books I wanted to read, not ones meant for display. I planted herbs on the kitchen windowsill: basil, rosemary, thyme. I watered them when they needed it, not when someone demanded it. I opened a high-yield savings account and watched the balance grow. Money that used to vanish into family obligations now accumulated with purpose. Paige came over one Saturday with takeout and wine. We sat on my new couch, my space, and she raised her glass. "To freedom," she said. "To freedom," I echoed. Later, after the easy conversation ran out, she asked, "Do you regret it, leaving them?" I thought about it honestly. The empty living room, the stunned faces, the moment everything shifted. "No," I said. "I regret staying as long as I did. I regret the years I let them convince me that sacrifice meant love. But leaving," I shook my head. "Leaving was the sanest thing I've ever done." "Have you talked to them since the cafe?" "Mom texts occasionally," I said. "Half-hearted attempts. Dad sent a birthday card." "And Lydia?" "She got a job," I said. "Retail. Part-time. It's a start." "And you?" "I'm good," I said. "Really good. Better than I've been in years." I looked around my apartment. Small, modest, entirely mine. I'm not lonely. I'm not guilty. I'm just free. Looking back now at the moment I drove away with my furniture in a truck, I understand it clearly. I didn't leave to punish them. I didn't leave for revenge or to teach a lesson. I left to stop being used. I left to reclaim a life I'd paused for people who valued my usefulness more than my humanity. I left because staying would have destroyed something essential. The part of me that knew I deserved more than being an ATM with a heartbeat. They didn't recover quickly. The house went on the market 6 months later. Too big, too expensive without my contributions. They downsized, adjusted, faced consequences. But I recovered immediately. The moment I drove away and didn't look back. Some call it selfish. I call it survival. Some call it cruel. I call it necessary. Some say family should forgive anything. I say family shouldn't require forgiveness for basic respect. I am not their villain. I am not their victim. I am simply someone who finally chose herself. And that choice, valuing my life as much as I'd valued theirs, changed everything. Tonight, my apartment is quiet, peaceful, the kind of silence that feels like contentment, not loneliness. My herbs are thriving. My savings are growing. My career is flourishing. And I am free. Finally, completely, unapologetically free.